Hey everyone, and welcome back to Talk Tensors. You know, this paper that we're diving into today really got me thinking about how we perceive the world and like how AI might be starting to catch up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in some pretty surprising ways.
Really?
It's called the sound of water, inferring physical properties from pouring liquids. And it's asking this question: can we actually teach machines to understand things about the physical world?
Just by listening.
Just by listening, like how we humans can.
Yeah, that's fascinating. We kind of take for granted how much we pick up just from sounds. This paper is really looking into whether AI can, do the same thing.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
know, it's like we can tell if a glass is half full or almost overflowing just by like that changing pitch as it fills.
Right.
This paper takes that idea and goes even further. They're trying to teach a machine to estimate the liquid level, the container size, even stuff like how long it'll take to fill.
All just from the sound of the pouring.
All from the sound.
The results are really pretty amazing, like accurate down to the centimeter sometimes. To get how they did it, we need to take a step back and look at the physics of sound,
Yeah.
and specifically something called axial resonance.
All right, so this is where it gets a little technical.
Yeah.
But stick with us, it's really pretty neat. Like, you know how when you blow across the top of a bottle, you get that distinct sound?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
That's axial resonance.
Mm.
The air column in the bottle, it's vibrating at a particular frequency. And just like with that bottle, as a container fills up with liquid, the height of that air column changes. And so does the pitch of the sound.
Right, so shorter air column, higher pitch, taller column, lower pitch.
It's kind of like how different sized organ pipes make different notes, right?
Exactly. The researchers use like a simplified version of the physics equation that describes this whole relationship between the air column height and frequency.
So they're basically using the physics to help the AI understand what it's hearing, but to teach a machine to isolate that specific pitch among all the other sounds of pouring, like the splashing, the gurgling.
It can't be easy.
It can't be easy, right?
It's not like the usual sound classification where you just got to tell the difference between like a dog barking and a car horn.
Yeah.
This time, the AI needs to get these super subtle changes in pitch and how it changes over time, too.
Wow, I see why you were so interested in this paper. It seems like they're really pushing the boundaries of what AI can even do with sound. So where did they even begin to tackle this challenge?
Well, they started with a model called Wave2Vec2, which was actually first designed for speech recognition. And they picked this because speech, just like the sound of pouring liquid, it's got all these pitch dynamics going on.
That's actually pretty clever. But they couldn't just use it right out of the box, could they?
No, definitely not. They had to fine-tune it for this very specific task. And this is where it gets really interesting. They didn't have the AI predict the frequency directly. Instead, they had it focus on the wavelength.
Now, why would they do that? Isn't wavelength just, the inverse of frequency? It seems like an extra step.
True. But remember that physics equation we were talking about? That relationship between wavelength and the height of the air column, it's linear. So by predicting the wavelength, they basically embedded that linear relationship right into how the model thinks.
Ah, I see. So they're making the AI work with the physics, not against it.
Exactly.
That's pretty smart. But, to train any AI model, you need a ton of data. I can only imagine how hard it would be to get accurate labeled data for all those different pitches in pouring. Did they have to hire someone to just sit there and label every tiny change in pitch for hours of pouring sounds?
Oh man, that would be a nightmare. No, they actually had a much more elegant solution. They used synthetic data. They trained a whole separate model to actually create artificial pouring sounds where they could have perfect control over the pitch.
Hold on, wait. They trained an AI to make fake pouring sounds.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
It's pretty ingenious, really. The synthetic data generator, it let them make this huge data set with perfectly labeled examples of pouring sound at tons of different pitches.
Okay, so that's pretty cool. But I have to imagine that fake pouring sounds, they can only take you so far. Real world pouring, it's messy, it's unpredictable, there are all sorts of other sounds going on. So how did they bridge that gap between this perfect world of the synthetic data and the messy, reality of real pouring?
That's a great question, and it takes us to one of the most innovative parts of this whole research project. Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about how the researchers used the synthetic data to train their AI to recognize those subtle changes in pitch when a container fills with liquid.
Right, and it was all very clever. But how do you go from that clean, controlled world of those fake pouring sounds to the messy reality of real pouring?
Well, they kind of realized that just relying on audio, maybe it wouldn't be enough.
Okay.
So they brought in another sense, vision. They trained a second model using something called Dino to actually get information from videos of pouring.
Wait, they use video to train an AI that's supposed to understand sound? That's kind of wild.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, but it's actually really smart. It's like the video model is a teacher. It can see the right answers,
Like,
like the air column length and container radius, straight from the video. And then it guides the audio model, which is learning to hear those same properties from the sound.
oh, so they're using one sense to help train another sense? That's pretty innovative.
Yeah.
But how do you even combine those two totally different types of data? I mean, it's not exactly apples to apples, is it?
You're right, it's tricky. They had to make sure the visual and audio data were kind of speaking the same language. You remember how the audio model is predicting wavelength, which is measured in centimeters?
Yeah, because of that linear relationship with air column height.
Right, exactly. But the video model, that's working with pixels. So they had to bring in a scale factor to bridge the gap to make sure both models were working with essentially the same units of measurement.
So they've got this audio model trained on fake sounds, a video model trained on real videos, and this scale factor acting as a translator between the two. Sounds complicated. Did it work? Can this AI really hear the physical world like we can?
So let's get to the results. It worked really well.
All right, give me the numbers. How good is this AI at figuring things out just from sound?
So let's start with the main task, estimating the air column length inside a container as it fills. For this, they use something called mean absolute error. It tells us how far off, on average, the AI's predictions were from the real measurements.
So the smaller the error, the better, right? What kind of numbers are we talking here?
Okay, on containers that the AI had already seen in training, it got a mean absolute error of just 0.6 centimeters.
That's tiny.
Yeah, that's about a quarter of an inch.
Imagine being able to tell how full a glass is just from the sound and be accurate to within a quarter of an inch. That's incredible. But what about containers the AI had never seen before? Could it generalize its knowledge to new stuff?
That's the key test for any AI, right? The results here are even more impressive. On a test set with totally unseen containers, the error was just a bit higher, 0.71 centimeters.
So it can handle new shapes and sizes. It's not just memorizing examples. It's learning something fundamental about how sound relates to those physical properties.
Exactly, and that ability to generalize, that's one of the most exciting things here.
Okay, so they nailed the air column length. What about those other properties? The container size, flow rate, and how long it takes to fill. Did it get those right too?
It did a really good job on all of them. For the container height, it was accurate to within a couple of centimeters. For the radius, the error was a little higher, but still pretty amazing, considering it's just figuring this out from sound.
And those trickier ones, flow rate and time to fill, those seem like they depend on more than just the sound.
You're right, those are harder. And this is where that video co-supervision really helped. For both flow rate and time to fill, the AI that had both audio and video did a lot better than the one just trained on audio alone.
So combining sound and vision, it really boosted its performance. But even the audio-only model did pretty well. It really makes you think about what else we could learn from the sounds around us if AI could decode it.
Absolutely. This research opens up so many possibilities for what AI can do with sound.
And speaking of possibilities, what are the bigger implications here? Does this change the game for AI in any way?
I think it's definitely a big step forward in how AI can perceive and understand the physical world through sound. We're getting closer to a future where AI can hear the world just like us, maybe even better.
Okay, so what kind of future are we talking about here? How could we actually use this technology?
One thing that immediately comes to mind is robotics. Imagine robots that can not only see but also listen to their surroundings, understanding things about objects just from the sounds they make.
Yeah, like that robotic bartender that can pour you the perfect drink just from listening.
Exactly. But it goes way beyond that. This kind of sensory perception could totally change how robots interact with the world, letting them do tasks that need a much deeper understanding of what's around them.
So you're talking robots that can cook, clean, maybe even perform surgery, all because they can hear the world around them.
The possibilities are really amazing, and we're just getting started. This is just the beginning of what AI could do with sound.
This is starting to sound like something out of a sci-fi movie. But before we go too far down that road, did the paper itself give any clues about where this research could go next?
Yeah, actually, the researchers talked about some really interesting future directions. And this is where we get into the novel notions part of our deep dive.
I love this part, so where we get to speculate a bit, right?
Yes. Exactly. We take what they did and brainstorm, some maybe outlandish, but not totally impossible next steps. So what if we could push this even further? What if?
Welcome back to Talk Tensors. It's Novel Notions time, where we take the research and see where our imaginations can take us.
Yeah, exploring those what ifs, those ideas that might seem a little crazy but could actually lead to big breakthroughs.
And from this sound of water paper, I think there's a lot of potential for some exciting novel notions.
Definitely. Remember, they showed us that AI can actually learn about physical stuff just from sound, and it's surprisingly accurate.
Yeah.
So where else could we take this?
Well, you were talking about some future directions for the research.
Yeah.
Want to kick us off with a novel notion?
Okay, one thing I thought about was, what if we could train AI to go beyond just basic stuff like the liquid level or container size? What if it could tell us about what the material is made of just from the sound?
Whoa, you mean like the AI could tell if it's glass or ceramic just from the sound?
Yeah, exactly. Think about it. Every material, it vibrates in its own way. It has its own sonic signature. A metal pot, it's going to ring differently than a wooden bowl.
Right.
And those little differences, they change the sound of pouring liquid, too.
That makes sense. But could an AI really pick up on those tiny differences?
It would be tough, for sure. But I think it's possible, especially if we combine the sound with other senses. Imagine a robot that can not only hear material, but also feel it, with its grippers or see it with its cameras. That would give it a much better understanding of what it's dealing with.
So like a robot in a recycling plant that can sort things super fast just by listening to the sounds? Or a construction robot that can check if building materials are good by tapping on them?
Exactly. We could even use it to discover totally new materials with specific sounds made for certain purposes.
I'm liking this novel notion. What other ideas have you got?
Well, how about taking it to a bigger scale? What if we could analyze the sounds of whole ecosystems?
Okay, you've lost me. What do you mean by that?
Imagine AI listening to everything in a rainforest. The leaves rustling, the bugs chirping, the birds singing, the rain falling. All those sounds, they tell us something about how healthy that ecosystem is.
We already use recordings to track wildlife, but this would be way more advanced.
Right. Instead of having people listen to hours of recordings, we could have AI that's always listening, picking up on any tiny changes that might be a problem.
So like it could tell us if a species is declining or if a predator has moved in or even if there's deforestation happening just from the sound.
Exactly, like an acoustic watchdog for the planet.
Now that's a powerful idea. It could revolutionize how we protect the environment.
And it goes beyond just conservation. We could use this to study oceans, cities, even the human body. The sounds of our gut microbiome could tell us a lot about our health.
Wow, the possibilities are endless. It makes you think about all the information hitting in the sounds around us. Who knows what we'll discover as we keep exploring sound and AI?
It's a really exciting time to be working in this field. I'm really looking forward to what comes next.
Me too. Well, that's it for this deep dive on Talk Tensors. We explored a fascinating paper, dug into the science, and even brainstormed some pretty wild novel notions.
Thanks to everyone for joining us on this sonic journey.
And be sure to check out the show notes for a link to the full paper and subscribe to Talk Tensors for more deep dives into the world of AI.
Until next time, keep thinking and keep listening to the amazing world of AI.